Hello YouTube, and Merry Christmas. Today we have a very special video. We have a piece of technology that I've wanted to get my hands on for at least 10 years now. A little bit less than that. It is a class of machine that really piqued my interest in my early days of getting into computing. It was one of those types of machines that I absolutely drooled over and just thought, this is the future, this is awesome. And it really got me excited for the world of computing back then. And I have fond memories of it today. And that, my friends, is the Ultra Mobile PC. I'm sure some of you from back then remember these. I used to read about these a lot online in articles from, I think Lil Puting used to post articles and videos about these back in the day, both on YouTube and in, article form. What an Ultra Mobile PC really is just a tiny computer, tiny handheld computer. Fujitsu made quite a few that were even smaller than this. This is the Samsung Q1U. There are many others. There's a Sony Vaio that looks a lot like a phone where the keyboard flips down, or the screen flips up so you can access the keyboard. It looks a lot like a phone. There are a few others. I think the ones made by Fujitsu are probably just some of the coolest things. Not all of them are x86 based though. Some of them are run on MIPS processors, I believe, and I think there's some ARM based ones too. But this one in particular is x86. This is the Samsung Q1U, and this is the example I'm going to be using for an Ultra Mobile PC. Because it was one of the main computers that I lusted after. It was Samsung's Ultra Mobile PCs, and the what was the other one? Yeah, that Vaio that was almost like a phone. I'll insert a picture of it right here. Yeah, look at that. It looks exactly like an old phone. Looks like it's the most 2000s looking thing in the world. And so is this, to be honest. Back then, Ultra Mobile PCs looked slick, new, and like they were going to be they looked very futuristic. Like, this is what computing's going to be like. It's just going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, when you look at one of these now with its physical keyboard and its resistive touchscreen, it hasn't aged well. It looks very 2000s. Like, you can tell this came out in 2007 just by looking at it. So, it was a cool thing at the time. I personally think it's still a cool piece of technology, but it just didn't survive the consumer market. And it's a piece of oddware for me in that respect, because they tried this in the consumer market. It worked for a little bit, but then once netbooks came out, these basically were thrown under the bus, more or less. This model itself, I believe, this model, I think, came out in 2007, but it was manufactured in around 2009. So, there you have it. So, what is the deal with the Samsung Q1U? This is a pretty cool Ultra Mobile PC. It has a very big screen that looks great. I'll tell you what, this screen looks great. This is an x86 based machine. It runs on an Intel A110 CPU, which is more or less a Pentium M based Celeron. So already you'd be kind of reminded of early netbooks that would use like 800 megahertz and 600 megahertz Celerons instead of the Atom chips. It was before that was a thing. And this model's from 2007, so I think it was sort of the beginning of that. It was around the era that netbooks were also using the same CPUs. So it has what, for all intents and purposes, is a Pentium M based Celeron. It does not have much cache on it. It's a low power chip. I believe it uses about 3 watts of power. It uses practically nothing. Think of the hardware in this sort of like an early netbook. That's basically what you're dealing with. Now, they did have a premium version of the Samsung Q1U. It was called the Samsung Q1U Ultra Premium. That one had a Core Solo in it, which was much more powerful, had a lot more cache than what the chip in this one did. This was, I think, a cheaper model at the time, which ironically are harder to get a hold of. You don't see a lot of the cheaper models, so just because they haven't survived the test of time. So it's interesting to see this and actually take a look at it. As you can see, it has a physical keyboard made for thumbs. Point that right there. So it's designed to type on there, on the other side as well. The layout's a bit weird. You have a joystick here, which can be used either as the arrow keys or the mouse, depending on when you hit that mouse button up there. I've never tried this internet button. I have no clue what it does. It has a fingerprint reader, oddly enough. It's got stereo microphone on it, which is pretty cool. Either that or it uses one for noise canceling. It was designed for Windows XP, but this particular machine came with Windows Vista. I can't imagine running Vista on a machine like this. That'd be agonizing. You get your left and right click right there. That's for the mouse button. You have some arrow keys here, which I believe are for the menu button that I haven't been able to get to work. The enter key, though, works just like the enter key on a regular keyboard does. And then, of course, you got your numlock up there, and you have a lot of the escape key, the key to do symbols, tab key up there. So you have all the basic controls there. Plus, if you have the right software installed, you get an on-screen keyboard. So there you have it. What else is on here? Up here we have a few buttons, which I don't think these are capacitive. You get a menu button, some volume controls, and a UDF button. I'm not sure what that does. UDF is usually universal disk format, so your guess is as good as mine. You get a ton of indicator lights up here, which is really nice. That's the indicator when you press the mouse button by the joystick. That will change from it'll change from the joystick to the mouse. And joystick is arrow keys, mouse is, well, a mouse. And then you get your hard drive light and your power light and all these other indicators as well. There's also a built-in webcam up there, which is not that great because it was 2007. On the top here, you get a headphone jack, USB port, and an SD card slot, full size. There's a vent up there for the fan, and a shutter button. Now, to comment on that shutter button, we need to look at the back of the machine. Here's the battery, which still has a charge, actually. Nice. It comes with a stand, built-in stand, which is nice, and there's your lever for the battery. There's also a webcam on the back, which is what that shutter button is for. So, knowing that there's a shutter button on this thing, this is basically the precursor to people awkwardly bringing their iPads everywhere and taking pictures with them, looking like a complete weirdo tourist. This is the precursor to that. You could do that with an ultra mobile PC. Yeah, I just thought I'd point that out. This is probably where that whole idea originated from. The front and back camera. At least on bigger devices. So on the side here you have, I don't know what that is, maybe a reset button or something. I have no idea what that is. It's either a button or a light. It might be a light, actually. I really don't know. That's your power input right there. You get a flap right here that opens up to reveal, yes folks, full-size ports. You get a full-size VGA, USB, and you get 10100 Ethernet there. That, on a little handheld PC like this, is awesome. I love having the full-size connectors on there. That way you can plug this into a projector for a presentation. You have the USB thing here for, flash drives or whatever. And you get real Ethernet, which is really cool. I like the fact that you get real Ethernet on a portable device like this, on a handheld device. That, in my mind, makes it a real computer. On the other side, you don't get much. You get a spot for a lanyard, power button, and we have the power thing here, where you can put it on hold, sort of like an old Discman, so that nobody can turn it on by accident. Or you can bring it down, and you hold that down to turn the machine on. Now I upgraded this machine a little bit. I put 2 gigs of RAM in it to upgrade it from the 1 gig it had originally. And doing that wasn't too hard, actually. What I did is I took the battery out. I undid the six screws or so. took the stylus out. This is the stylus, by the way. It's a Samsung device. It's got to have a stylus, right? And pulled the back off. And you had access to the 1.8-inch ZIF hard drive, the RAM, and some slots for wireless cards and WWAN cards and stuff like that. I'm going to leave the stylus out since I'm going to use it later. So you may be wondering, how does this machine run? Well, it runs very well, actually. Now, because it was the cheaper model, it has an 800 megahertz processor in it, which is pretty slow, but it is low power, so it offers lots of battery life. Speaking of battery life, I got 3 batteries with this thing. You see, this was donated. This was donated to me by Sansui358 here on YouTube because he knew that because I had told him about ultra mobile PCs and how much I really wanted to play around with one. He was nice enough to send this one to me with all the accessories. So not only did I get 3 batteries, which I think all work, including the one that's in the machine already. Got the power cord as well, which is just a simple brick on a leash power supply with a barrel type connector on the end. But I also got the dock. Here is the dock to the machine, which this part of it's broken, but it doesn't really need that to work. Let me open the stand here. This piece of plastic. I need to fix this. I have the other piece on the plastic that needs to go in. I just need to glue it. So here's the docking station. And you put the Ultra Mobile PC in this docking station, and it plugs in via the barrel connector there. But you can also charge another battery behind it. So not only can you charge the battery that's in the back of the machine, but you can also shove one in here and charge it. How cool is that? Really convenient. It's a really good idea. This was a really just well thought out product. Of course, the LED for charging is on the front, Q1 Ultra. And you get a USB lead here, which interfaces with the dock itself. And the dock has a USB audio device on it, which lets you use, your typical analog audio, and it offers some extra USB ports. So it's a USB hub and a USB audio device all in one. It's very nice. Which is probably what I'm going to do most of my demonstrations with this machine in, because it's just convenient to have the machine sitting in a dock. So let me stick it in the dock there. There you go. The machine's sitting nicely in its dock. So I'm sure many of you guys now are like, I want to see this machine run. All right, well, hold your horses. Let me plug this thing in and we'll give it a go. So let's take a look at the machine itself. Now I just hold that thing down, and then the machine turns on. You saw the BIOS there for a second. I've put Windows XP on this thing, as you can see. And it runs Windows XP fairly well. I've tried several different OSs on this thing, including Windows 8.1. Windows 10 will not run on it. Windows 8.1 will, though. And 8.1 actually ran surprisingly well on this. If I had the Core Solo model of this, I might not put past putting 8.1 on there permanently. Now, there are trade-offs to a machine this small. The OS is sitting on a 60 gigabyte 1.8-inch ZIF hard drive that uses an IDE interface. So, despite this thing being quote-unquote the future, it was already obsolete when it came out in 2007 with a IDE interface. It should have had a SATA interface, but sadly it did not. Now, let me demonstrate the mouse here. When I move this joystick around, it moves the mouse, but of course you can also use the touchscreen for that as well. Works just fine. So for the sake of it being a touchscreen, let's log in. Has built-in speakers that are kind of tinny, as you can hear. However, it is still a pretty useful machine if you put Windows XP on it. I have put quite a few programs on here, as you can see. Has Putty on it, has Winamp on it, has Keg of Fusion, ScumVM, DOSBox, Original Half-Life, and Opposing Force. You know, I've Adobe Audition 1.5. It's still pretty useful as far as a lot of stuff goes. I've also had the taskbar auto-hide itself. It has the classic netbook resolution of 1024 by 600. So this resolution was a thing before netbooks came out. It was on the ultra mobile PCs where they tried to size things down big time. So that 10-inch screen with that resolution was actually not too bad. So let me. So I move my mouse over to my computer, hit the R button to right click, and go down to there. Hit left click. With one hand, it's a bit cumbersome, but with two, it's actually not too bad. As you can see, it's taking a while to come up with just the properties menu, so this cheaper model was a little slow, even with the extra RAM I put in it. Now, the good news about that is you can see it's smashing the hard drive. The good news about that is that what I can do is upgrade this to an SSD. They still, Super Talent, I think, still makes ZIF 1.8-inch SSDs for machines like this. You can get them up to 256 gigs, but I'm thinking I might get a 128 gig one for this machine, just so I can upgrade the storage on it, because 60 gigs is a bit sad, to be honest. Oh, this doesn't have 2 gigs anymore? I thought it did. My bad. This actually has a gig in it. Huh. I did originally put 2 gigs in here, just to see how it would run with other operating systems, mostly with Linux, versions of Linux and Windows 8.1, but now I remember, once I put Windows XP back on here, I just brought it back to a gig, because a gig is fine. Now, as you can see, it's an 800 megahertz processor. I wish it would focus. It's running Windows XP Professional Service Pack 2. And, you know, there you go. I don't have it connected to wireless because I don't plan to really use this online. It's too old for that, especially with Windows XP, where it's just simply not safe to do so. You know what, I'm just going to hit buttons here. Yeah, there we go. So, what can this machine do? Well, it's basically a full-fledged Windows machine. It can do anything a Windows PC can, except, of course, any gaming or anything like that. It's not really made for that. Now, what I wanted to do with a machine like this back in 2006 or 7 was have a portable machine to be able to use AOL Instant Messenger on. That's how 2000s this was. I could use I could use AIM, I could use MSN Messenger, Yahoo Messenger, Skype, all that stuff on a machine like this and just carry it around the house. And of course, back then I was a kid, so my parents were apt to you know, parents back then are apt to take away your stuff when you're not behaving, so I figured I could just keep this somewhere, you know what I mean? I had dumb ideas back then. But it works. I mean, there's DOSBox. So I could play DOS games on this easily. Not calibrated particularly well, this screen. But it works. I think the first thing we have to do, because this is a tablet, is go into Paint. I'm going to try navigating the menu with Paint. There, okay. Now we got to make the brush size big. kind of hard to do this with a stylus. It's not 100% accurate on a resistive touchscreen. There we go. There you go. Now erasing it's a bit difficult. But there you go. It works pretty well. There you go. There's paint. I had to do that. It works pretty well. It's not exactly a drawing tablet, but you know, you can make little doodles and paint for fun. You know, that's something that I probably would have done back then. It will run ScumVM games. I think one thing it still will do pretty well is that. So you could run some touchscreen games on here pretty easily. And ScumVM is the best way to experience that. So let's... What's a nice quick one I can show you? How about let's explore the airport? Because that one's easy to skip through. Come on. So all these old games from when I was a kid all still work on here.
Hi, I'm Fuzzy the Knowledge Bug. Welcome to the airport. This is a very...
Now I don't get what the deal is. It was actually working before.
Planes landing and taking off. Helicopters, seaplanes, jet airplanes, hangars. There's so much to explore at the airport, so let's get going.
So point-and-click games from when I was a kid actually work, so you could hand this to your kid and have them play point-and-click games. So, you know, it was kind of the precursor to, you know, giving kids tablets today. You know, you give a kid a tablet to play Angry Birds or something. But back in 2007, you could do this. You could load up ScumVM, load up some old 90s edutainment games, and actually have it work with the stylus. Although, hopefully the kid wouldn't stab the stylus through the screen. But, you know, we can demonstrate this. It works. I'll click on this guy and he'll check his watch. So it makes point and click that much more of a thing. Let's get a flight out of here, shall we?
Like my tie?
What a smug dude. But yeah, it's amazing how much this basically was a precursor to the way the world works today in the 2010s and 2010s. This was all back in 2007 that all this stuff was possible. Of course, it was not as intuitive as it is now. Now you can just go to the App Store and download something and play it. This you'd actually have to set it up yourself, which for me is more fun because I'm such a geek. But it has its merits. You know, it's just it as a piece of history that's pretty cool. And of course, there's one of my favorite games. If the screen would respond, there we go. Resistive touchscreens. There's games like this. If it would load. Hexic Deluxe. It's trying. There it goes. No. There we go. I installed this from a USB DVD drive. I don't think this game's going to run the fastest. No, actually it is running pretty well. So here's Hexic. It's a lot like Bejeweled. So let's play a little bit of it. So you could literally play this with your finger and it would work fine, as you can see. So you could just sit in the airport while waiting for a plane and just do this. As you can see, the game's a lot like Bejeweled. It's fun too, I like it. I'm not actually trying, I'm just hitting these because I can touch them. So, you know, there's lots of potential fun to be had with machines like this. And those are just a few things. Also, you could be completely crazy like a lot of people have and run full-fledged games on here. I remember seeing a video of someone playing World of Warcraft on a Dell Mini 9, and I thought, wow. I saw that back in the day and thought, these people like to push it to the limit. Well, you can't play Crysis on a Samsung Q1U, but you know what you can play? You can play Half-Life 1. Just plug in a mouse. I swear it runs. This is the original 1998 or 99 version of it, too. The non-Steam version from Sierra. So if this was your only machine, you could get a monitor, plug it in, and play old games on it. It would work. And there you go, Half-Life 1. Let's try it. Do I have any games saved on here? No, I don't. Damn. Of course, it's in the base, really low resolution of 300 by 200. But that's okay. Still looks fine. See how smooth that is? Works fine. Although this is the slowest joystick ever. Look at that. I can move faster with my finger, but moving like that sucks. If you're gonna do this, I would plug in a mouse because look at this. I just all over the place. Now this is a good way to demonstrate going between the mouse and the joystick up here. It changes from the mouse, which of course moves your cursor up and down and left and right. You change that to the joystick setting, as you saw the light change up there. It changes to the arrow keys, as you can see. So there you go, you're walking around. Move it back to the mouse, you're looking around. Move it back to the joystick, now you're walking around. So this is probably the best way I can think of to demonstrate that feature of this ultra mobile PC. Now, I doubt you guys want to listen to something that you've been hearing since 1998, so I'm gonna quit that. But just to prove to you it works, and just to show you what how that joystick functionality works, there you have it. Another good use for a computer like this now would be something like emulators. Emulators would work great on it because you could assign keys on either side of this keyboard to play games with, and that's what I plan to do with this machine. I'd love to use it to emulate some 32X games, some Genesis games, some Super Nintendo games, maybe even some Sega CD games, like the version of I can't remember the name of the game. It's a space shooter. Damn, I can picture it, but I can't remember it. Anyway, I'll subtitle it. Yeah, that's something I would love to put on here. The other thing this is good at is productivity. Now, I'd imagine typing on this would be an absolute nightmare, but for those of you who want to do it, want to try it, there you go. I put Office on it. So I have Office 2007, which fits the machine's era perfectly. 2007 machine, 2007 model of a machine. The machine was actually made in 2009, but the model came out in 2007. Fits the era pretty well. So there you go. You could type there and it works just fine. I'd be more inclined to use Office on this machine to give a presentation. So, whoops, I accidentally moved my mouse all the way down there. Yeah, because I really want to save that I just typed. I have Sumatra PDF on here too, which could help you view those PDFs. Let's try using the stylus again. I'd be much more inclined to give a PowerPoint presentation using this machine. So You could load up PowerPoint, something on a USB drive, plug your VGA into the projector, and then give your presentation. It'd be great for that. It'd be great for somebody who travels on the go, giving presentations to people, like Al Gore. Al Gore would get a lot of use out of a machine like this. You could use it to record audio, of course, with something like Adobe Audition 1.5. And there you go. You can do multi-track audio on a little machine like this, and it runs beautifully. How cool is that? So, this has been a little piece of history, the Ultra Mobile PC. As you can see, when you actually use one in person, it's nothing special. It's literally just yet another x86 machine that runs Windows XP or whatever operating system you want it to. But they had videos back in the day where this was the future. They had docking cradles where you'd put this stuff, like you could sit on your bed, Skype with people, talk to people on instant messaging with it, browse the internet, I don't know, buy something on Amazon, and then put it back in its cradle and go do something else. Or put it in its cradle and watch a video on your LCD TV. It was stuff like that. They literally pinned these as the future. I remember seeing a Microsoft video that promoted the hell out of these. I think the Vio was mostly featured in that one, rather than the Samsung Q1U. As maybe some others as well, but this was one of the main ones, along with the Vio, that was really championed at the time. Was one of these. And, they made these look bigger than they were. Now, these weren't anything new. They use machines like this in an industrial setting. This was their attempts to bring this type of form factor to the consumer market back in the mid-2000s. It really didn't work out because, like I said earlier, the netbook craze just threw these under the bus pretty much immediately because it was a bigger screen with a keyboard that people were used to, and with an operating system they're used to. Not that this wasn't, but look at this keyboard. I mean, this thing sucks to type on. It sucks to move the mouse around with, but it's cool. It's Oddware. It didn't take off for a reason, and the main reason was, in my opinion, was usability. The usability on this thing is pretty poor. It's a little bit hard to use, in my opinion. The industrial models, I'm sure, are a little bit better than this, and in certain applications, this would be great, like a kiosk, for example. But as a consumer machine, I'm not so sure. For people like me, I think it's awesome because it's just nerdy, man. Look at it. It's cool. But other than the cool factor, its practical uses did not last very long, especially with the specs they were putting in these machines, which is why the machines grew bigger again. I think the cycle of tiny computing in the modern era started with the Ultra Mobile PC. It started with these, evolved into netbooks, and today has evolved into Ultrabooks and Chromebooks. So, this is really where it all started in the modern era, in the Windows XP era. I mean, we did have tablet PCs in the 2000s, but they really weren't as handheld as this stuff was. This was a big deal at the time. And I just wanted to showcase this for you and just show you how cool it is. A lot of people, these were expensive at the time, so I know not a lot of people got to see these or use them. I only got to test out the little Vio that was like a phone in Best Buy once back then, and I thought it was cool. I hope to get my hands on one of those in the future and make a video about it because it was the one I lusted after. But this one was a close second. I liked the Samsung Q1 series machines. They're pretty cool. The usability is not great. I really wonder how the keyboard on the Vio fares compared to this, because the keyboard on this is a bit awkward to use. You'd really have to get used to it. And the mouse joystick honestly isn't that bad. It reminds me a bit of a Sony PSP. It's not too bad. I mean, these machines were strange. but they were cool. They were a cool strange. And when looking back on it, this machine is very 2000s, just in every aspect. From the OS it runs, to the glossy plastic, to the styling, and to the hardware itself. You know, they made it look like the future, but it's almost like a 70s future with avocado green everywhere. It didn't age as well as they thought it would, you know what I mean? Wood grain. Imagine if this Samsung was wood grain. That'd be kind of cool, actually. Now I just wanted to show you the BIOS, just to prove how much of a real computer this is. Look at that. Look at that. It is a standard-ass Phoenix BIOS. Which is nice, and that way I can show you what hard drive is in here. It is a Toshiba 60 gig, 1.8-inch hard drive. You can Google that model number and you know what's in there. Has a gig of RAM in it. I thought it was 2 gigs originally, but I forgot that I switched that out. Whoops. Has Intel Speed Step for battery life. There you go. Has the purchase date. September 2009. So this was a very late made model of one of these, because I think these really died out in 2008. I mean, they still hung on for a while, but you know, the netbook craze was in full effect by then. Smart battery calibration. There's lots of stuff in here. Okay, hit enter instead. There you go. So, this thing can be used for quite a bit still today. It can be used for watching standard definition video. It could be used to connect to IRC. You could use this as a Linux terminal if you wanted to, with just in text mode, or even in a graphical user interface. But honestly, this machine's specs are so low that Linux's code is just too new for this machine. Similar to how it's getting for machines like Pentium 4s and single-core machines. The code in Linux is just getting a little too new to run well on machines like that. And this machine is definitely part of in that category, with an 800 megahertz, for what all intents and purposes is basically a Celeron. It just doesn't run Linux that well. It runs XP much better, just because XP is older code that's optimized for the hardware that it's running on. However, it can still be useful as a Windows XP machine, as I've demonstrated before. You can use it for emulators, you can use it for video playback, you can use it for point-and-click adventure games and vintage software, and audio recording. You know, you have lots of options, and the audio recording is especially helpful when you have a dock like this, which has audio ports on the back of it. So I might just use that myself. I mean, you could, let's say you're filming a video, you could bring this around and use it to do voiceovers, or record audio for your video. I've seen LGR do that with a netbook in a few of his videos, where he just recorded with a microphone. I think those are some earlier videos, though. So, let's talk. And the reason that this might be good for video playback and emulators and portable stuff like that is that the batteries in these last a long time. The batteries in these are killer, because this machine uses almost no power. And having 3 extra batteries just makes that even better. The only drawback is 60 gig hard drive, so I need to upgrade that to the 128 gig SSD at some point or another. And of course, you could use this machine with other operating systems, like I mentioned earlier. You can find uses for Linux that are minimal. It could be a server if you really wanted it to, but that'd be so pointless. I would run, if I were to use this machine with Linux, I would run a text-based IRC client on it basically all the time. And just use it for IRC. But I don't use IRC as much anymore, so, you know, that's a thing. Well, folks, I don't know what else to say. This was an interesting time in history. This really represents sort of my formative computing years, when I really started to get into the hardware, the software, and just mucking around with it other than just using computers. I drooled over stuff like this back then. I thought these tiny machines, from the beginning, tiny machines I've had sort of an affinity with. And it's continued to this day with things like netbooks and some of the 12-inch ThinkPads and, you know, machines like that. This is what started it all for me, the Ultra Mobile PC. And it birthed a whole new industry of tiny computing. Netbooks, Ultrabooks, Chromebooks. Of course, IBM was doing that before everybody else was. But this machine sort of heralded it into a new era. I don't know how to say that word properly, apparently. But yeah, there you go. This is the Samsung Q1U. It was an interesting piece to look at. I certainly hope you enjoyed this video, enjoyed a little bit of a history lesson. It's more my history than the history of these machines in general, but in my world, this is how these machines were. And these are my observations for how things have evolved since then. There you have it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Have a good one, everybody. Ciao. Takes a while to shut off, doesn't it?